these millions of planets with their own eyes. In every planet, there is as much material variegatedness as we find in our own planet. This planet Earth is but an insignificant spot in the cosmic structure. Yet, foolish men, puffed up by a false sense of scientific advancement, have concentrated their energy in the pursuit of so called economic development on this planet, not knowing of the variegated economic facilities available on other planets. According to modern astronomy, the gravity of the moon is different from that of Earth. Therefore, one who goes to the moon will be able to pick up large weights and jump vast distances. In the Ramayana, Hanuman is described as being able to lift huge weights as heavy as hills and jump over the ocean. Modern astronomy has confirmed that this is indeed possible. The disease of the modern civilized man is disbelief of everything in the revealed scriptures. Faithless non believers cannot make progress in spiritual realization, for they cannot understand the spiritual potency. The small fruit of a banyan contains hundreds of seeds, and in each seed is the potency to produce another banyan tree with the potency to produce millions more of such fruits. This law of nature is visible before us, although how it works is beyond our understanding. This is but an insignificant example of the potency of Godhead. There are many similar phenomena that no scientist can explain. Everything, in fact, is inconceivable, for the truth is revealed only to the proper persons. Although there are varieties of personalities from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, all of whom are living beings, their development of knowledge is different. Therefore, we have to gather knowledge from the right source. Indeed, in reality, we can get knowledge only from the Vedic sources, the four Vedas, with their supplementary Puranas, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and their corollaries, which are known as Smritis, are all authorized sources of knowledge. If we are at all to gather knowledge, we must gather it from these sources without hesitation. Revealed knowledge may in the beginning be unbelievable because of our paradoxical desire to verify everything with our tiny brains. But the speculative means of attaining knowledge is always imperfect. The perfect knowledge propounded in the revealed scriptures is confirmed by the great acharyas who have left ample commentations upon them. None of these acharyas has disbelieved in the Shastras. One who disbelieves in the Shastras is an atheist, and we should not consult an atheist, however great he may be. A staunch believer in the Shastras, with all their diversities, is the right person from whom to gather real knowledge. Such knowledge may seem inconceivable in the beginning, but when put forward by the proper authority, its meaning is revealed, and then one no longer has any doubts about it. That Vaikuntha region, that Vaikuntha region is all pervading, infinite, and sublime, supreme. It is the residence of Lord Krishna and his incarnations. In the highest region of that spiritual sky is the spiritual planet called Krishna Loka. It has three divisions: Dwaraka, Mathura, and Gokula. Sri Gokula, the highest of all, is also called as Vraja, Goloka, Svetadipa, and Vrindavana. Like the transcendental body of Lord Krishna, Gokula is all pervading, infinite, and supreme. It expands both above and below without any restrictions. Srila Jiva Goswami, the great authority and philosopher in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has discussed the abode of Krishna in his Krishna Sandarbha. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord refers to my abode. Srila Jiva Goswami, examining the nature of Krishna's abode, refers to the Skanda Purana, which states, Ya yatha bhuvi vartante puryo bhagavata priyaha tas tata shanti vaikunte tattal lilamrutam adartaha. The abodes of Godhead in the material world, such as Dwaraka, Mathura, and Gokula, are facsimils representing the abodes of Godhead in the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha Dama. The unlimited spiritual atmosphere of that Vaikuntha Dama is far above and beyond the material cosmos. This is confirmed in the Swayambhuva Tantra, in a discussion between Lord Shiva and Parvati regarding the effect of chanting the mantra of 14 syllables. There it is stated, Nanakalpa Lata Kirnam Vaikuntam Vyapakam Smaret Ataga Samyam Gunanam Cha Prakirti Sarva Karanam. While chanting the mantra, one should always remember the spiritual world, which is very extensive and full of desire trees that can yield anything one desires. Below that Vaikuntha region is the potential material energy which causes the material manifestation. The places of the pastimes of Lord Krishna, such as Dwaraka, Mathura, and Vrindavana, eternally and independently exist in Krishna Loka. They are the actual abodes of Lord Krishna, and there is no doubt that they are situated above the material cosmic manifestation. The abode known as Vrindavana or Gokula is also known as Goloka. The Brahma Samhita states that Gokula, the highest region of the kingdom of God, resembles a lotus flower with thousands of petals. The outer portion of that lotus like planet is a square place known as Svetadipa. In the inner portion of Gokula, there is an elaborate arrangement for Sri Krishna's residence with his eternal associates such as Nanda and Yasoda. The transcendental abode exists by the energy of Sri Baladeva, who is the original pole of Shesha or Ananta. The Tantras also confirm this description by stating that the abode of Sri Anantadeva, a plenary portion of Baladeva, is called the kingdom of God. Vrindavana Dama is the innermost abode within the quadrangular realm of Svetadipa, which lies outside of the boundary of Gokula Vrindavana. According to Jiva Goswami, Vaikuntha is also called Brahmaloka. The Narada Pancharatra, in a statement concerning the mystery of Vijaya, describes Tat Tats Sarvopari Goleke Tatra Lokopari Swayam Viharet Paramanandi Govindo Tula Nayakaha. The predominator of the gopis, Govinda, the principal deity of Gokula, always enjoys himself in a place called Goloka, in the topmost part of the spiritual sky. From the authoritative evidence cited by Jiva Goswami, we may conclude that Krishna Loka is the supreme planet in the spiritual sky, which is far beyond the material cosmos. For the enjoyment of transcendental variety, the pastimes of Krishna there have There are three divisions, and these pastimes are performed in the three abodes: Dwaraka, Mathura, and Gokula. When Krishna descends to this universe, he enjoys the pastimes in places of the same name. These places on earth are non different from those original abodes, for they are facsimils of those original holy places in the transcendental world. They are as good as Sri Krishna himself and are equally worshipable. Lord Chaitanya declared that Lord Krishna, who presents himself as the son of the king of Raja, is worshipable, and that Vrindavana Dama is equally worshipable. That abode is manifested within the material world by the will of Lord Krishna. It is identical to that original Gokula. They are not two different bodies. The above mentioned Dhamas are movable by the omnipotent will of Lord Krishna. When Sri Krishna appears on the face of the earth, he can also make his Dhamas appear without changing their original structure. One should not discriminate between the Dhammas on the earth and those in the spiritual sky, thinking those on earth to be material and the original abodes to be spiritual. All of them are spiritual. Only for us who cannot experience anything beyond matter in our present conditioned state, do the Dhammas and Lord Himself in His Archa form appear before us, resembling matter, to give us the facility to see spirit with material eyes. In the beginning, this may be difficult for a neophyte to understand, but in due course, when one is advanced in devotional service, it will be easier, and he will appreciate the Lord's presence in these tangible forms. The land there is touchstone, Chintamani, and the forest abound with desired trees. Material eyes see it as an ordinary place. By the grace of the Lord, His Dhammas and He Himself can all be present simultaneously without losing their original importance. Only when one fully develops his affection and love of Godhead can one see those Dhammas in their original appearance. Srila Narottama Das Thakur, a great acharya in the preceptorial line of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has said for our benefit that one can perfectly see the Dhammas only when one completely gives up the mentality of lording it over material nature. One's spiritual vision develops proportionately to one's giving up the debased mentality of unnecessarily enjoying matter. A diseased person who has become diseased because of a certain bad habit must be ready to follow the advice of the physician, and as a natural sequence, he must attempt to give up the cause of the disease. The patient cannot indulge in the bad habit and at the same time expect to be cured by the physician. Modern materialistic civilization, however, is maintaining a diseased atmosphere. The living being is a spiritual spark, as spiritual as the Lord Himself. The only difference is that the Lord is great and the living entity, like living being, is small. Qualitatively, they are one, but quantitatively, they are different. Therefore, since the living being is spiritual in constitution, he can be happy only in the spiritual sky, where there are unlimited spiritual spheres called Vaikunthas. A spiritual being conditioned by a material body must therefore try to get rid of his disease instead of developing the cause of the disease. Foolish persons engrossed in their material assets, are unnecessarily proud of being leaders of the people, but they ignore the spiritual value of man. Such illusion leaders make plans covering any number of years, but they can hardly make humanity happy in a state conditioned by the threefold miseries inflicted by material nature. One cannot control the laws of nature by any amount of struggling. One must at last be subject to death, nature's ultimate law. Death, birth, old age, and illness are symptoms of the diseased condition of the living being. The highest aim of human life should therefore be to get free from these miseries and go back home, back to Godhead. But with the eyes of love of Godhead, one can see its real identity as the place where Lord Krishna performs his pastimes with the covered boys and covered girls. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending cows, yielding all desires in abodes built with spiritual germs and surrounded by millions of purpose trees. He is always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. This is a verse from the Brahma Samhita 5.29. This description of the abode of Krishna gives us definitive information of the transcendental place where not only is life eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, but there are ample vegetables, milk, jewels, and beautiful homes and gardens tended by lovely damsels who are all goddesses of fortune. Krishna Loka is the topmost planet in the spiritual sky, and below it are innumerable spheres, a description of which can be found in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the beginning of Lord Brahma self-realization, he was shown a transcendental vision of the Vaikuntha spheres by the grace of Narayana. Later, by the grace of Krishna, he was shown a transcendental vision of Krishna Loka. This transcendental vision is like the reception of television from the moon via a mechanical system for receiving modulated waves, but it is achieved by penance and meditation within oneself. Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, states that in Vaikuntha Loka, the material modes of nature represented by the qualities of goodness, patience, and ignorance have no influence. In the material world, the highest qualitative manifestation is goodness, which is characterized by truthfulness, mental equilibrium, cleanliness, control of the senses, simplicity, essential knowledge, faith in God, scientific knowledge, and so on. Nevertheless, all these qualities are mixed with passion and imperfection. But the qualities in Vaikuntha are a manifestation of God's internal potency, and therefore they are purely spiritual and transcendental, with no trace of material infection. No material planet, even Satya Loka, is comparable in quality to the spiritual planets, where the five inherent qualities of the material world, namely ignorance, misery, egoism, anger, and envy, are completely absent. In the material world, everything is a creation. Anything we can think of within our experience, including even our own bodies and minds, was created. This process of creation began with the life of Brahma, and the creative principle is prevalent all over the material universe because of the quality of patience. But since the quality of patience is conspicuous By its absence in the Vaikuntha planets, nothing there is created. Everything there is eternally existent. And because there is no mode of ignorance, there is also no question of annihilation or destruction. In the material world, one may try to make everything permanent by developing the above mentioned qualities of goodness. But because the goodness in the material world is mixed with passion and ignorance, nothing here can exist permanently, despite all the good plans of the best scientific brains. Therefore, in the material world, we have no experience of eternity, bliss, and fullness of knowledge. But in the spiritual world, because of the complete absence of the qualitative modes, everything is eternal, blissful, and cognizant. Everything can speak, everything can move, everything can hear, and everything can see in fully blessed existence for eternity. The situation being so, naturally, space and time in the forms of past, present, and future have no influence there. In the spiritual sky, there is no change because time has no influence. Consequently, the influence of Maya, the total external energy, which induces us to become more and more materialistic and forget our relationship with God, is also absent there. As spiritual sparks of the beams emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord, we are all permanently related with Him and equal to Him in quality. The material energy is a covering of the spiritual spark, but in the absence of that material covering, the living beings in Vaikuntha Loka are never forgetful of their identities. They are eternally cognizant of their relationship with God in their constitutional position of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord because they constantly engage in the transcendental service of the Lord. It is natural to conclude that their senses are also transcendental, for one cannot serve the Lord with material senses. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha Loka do not possess material senses with which to lord it over material nature. Persons with a poor fund of knowledge conclude that the place void of material qualities must be some sort of formless nothingness. In reality, however, there are qualities in the spiritual world, but they are different from the material qualities because everything there is eternal, unlimited, and pure. The atmosphere there is self illuminating, and thus there is no need of a sun, a moon, fire, electricity, and so on. One who can reach that abode does not come back to the material world with a material body. There is no difference between atheist and the faithful in the Vaikuntha planets because all who settle there are freed from the material qualities, and thus suras and asuras become equally obedient, loving servitors of the Lord. The residents of Vaikuntha have brilliantly black complexions, much more fascinating and attractive than the dull white and black complexions found in the material world. Their bodies, being spiritual, have no equals in the material world. The beauty of a bright cloud when lightning flashes on it merely hints at their beauty. Generally, the inhabitants of Vaikuntha dress in yellow clothing. Their bodies are delicate and attractively built, and their eyes are like the petals of lotus flowers. Like Lord Vishnu, the residents of Vaikuntha have four hands decorated with a conch shell, wheel, club, and lotus flower. Their chests are beautifully broad and fully decorated with necklaces of brilliant diamond-like metal surrounded by costly jewels never to be found in the material world. The residents of Vaikuntha are always powerful and effulgent. Some of them have complexions like red coral cat's eyes and lotus flowers, and each of them has earrings of costly jewels. On their heads, they wear flowery crowns resembling garlands. In the Vaikunthas, there are airplanes, but they make no tumultuous sounds. Material airplanes are not at all safe. They can fall down and crash at any time, for matter is imperfect in every respect. In the spiritual sky, however, the airplanes are also spiritual, and they are spiritually brilliant and bright. These airplanes do not fly business executives, politicians, or planning commissions as passengers, nor do they carry cargo or postal bags, for these are all unknown there. These planes are for pleasure trips only, and the residents of Vaikuntha fly in them with their heavenly beautiful fairy like consorts. Therefore, these airplanes, full of residents of Vaikuntha, both male and female, increase the beauty of the spiritual sky. We cannot imagine how beautiful they are, but their beauty may be compared to the clouds in the sky, accompanied by silver branches of electric lightning. The spiritual sky of Vaikuntha Loka is always decorated in this way. The full opulence of the internal potency of Godhead is always resplendent in Vaikuntha Loka, where goddesses of fortune are ever increasingly attached to serving the lotus feet of personality of Godhead. These goddesses of fortune, accompanied by their friends, always create a festive atmosphere of transcendental mirth, always singing the glories of the Lord. They are not silent even for a moment. There are unlimited Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky, and the ratio of these planets to the material planets in the material sky is 3 to 1. Thus, the poor materialist is busy making political adjustments on a planet that is most insignificant in God's creation. To say nothing of this planet Earth, the whole universe with innumerable planets throughout the galaxies is comparable to a single mustard seed in a bag full of mustard seeds. But the poor materialist makes plans to live comfortably here and thus wastes his valuable human energy in something that is doomed to frustration. Instead of wasting his time with business speculations, he should seek the life of plain living and high spiritual thinking, and thus save himself from the perpetual materialistic unrest. Even if a materialist wants to enjoy developed material facilities, he can transfer himself to planets where he can experience material pleasures much more advanced than those available on earth. The best plan is to prepare oneself to return to the spiritual sky after leaving the body. However, if one is intent on enjoying material facilities, one can transfer himself to other planets in the material sky by utilizing yogic powers. The playful spaceships of the astronauts are but childish entertainments and are of no use for this purpose. The Astanga Yoga system is a materialistic art of controlling air by transferring it from the stomach to the navel, from navel to the heart, from the heart to the collarbone, from there to the eyeballs, from there to the cerebellum, and from there to any desired planet. The velocities of air and light are taken into consideration by the material scientist, but he has no information of the velocity of the mind and intelligence. We have some limited experience of the velocity of the mind because in a moment we can transfer our minds to places hundreds of thousands of miles away. Intelligence is even finer. Finer than intelligence is the soul, which is not matter like mind and intelligence, but is spirit or antimatter. The soul is hundreds of thousands of times finer and more powerful than intelligence. We can thus only imagine the velocity of the soul in its traveling from one planet to another. Needless to say, the soul travels by its own strength and not with the help of any kind of material vehicle. The bestial civilization of eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratifying has misled modern man into forgetting how powerful soul he has. As we have already described, the soul is a spiritual spark, many times more illuminating, dazzling, and powerful than the sun, moon, or electricity. Human life is spoiled when man does not realize his real identity with his soul. Lord Chaitanya appeared with Lord Nityananda to save man from this type of misleading civilization. Srimad Bhagavatam also describes how yogis can travel to all the planets in the universe. When the vital force is lifted to the cerebellum, there is every chance that this force will burst out from the eyes, nose, ears, etc., as these are the places that are known as the seventh orbit of the vital force. But the yogis can block these walls by complete suspension of air. The yogi then concentrates the vital force in the middle portion, that is, between the eyebrows. At this position, the yogi can think of the planet to which he wants to go after leaving the body. He can then decide whether he wants to go to the abode of Krishna in the transcendental Vaikunthas, from which he will not be required to descend into the material world, or to travel to higher planets in the material universe. The perfect yogi is at the liberty to do either. For the perfect yogi who has attained success in the method of leaving his body in perfect consciousness, transferring from one planet to another is as easy as an ordinary man's walking to the grocery store. As already discussed, the material body is just a covering of the spiritual soul. Mind and intelligence are the undercoverings, and the gross body of earth, water, air, and so on is the overcoating of the soul. As such, any advanced soul who has realized himself by the yogic process, who knows the relationship between matter and spirit, can leave the gross dress of the soul in perfect order and as he desires. By the grace of God, we have complete freedom because the Lord is kind to us. We can live anywhere, either in the spiritual sky or in the material sky, upon whichever planet we desire. However, misuse of this freedom causes one to fall down into the material world and suffer the threefold miseries of conditioned life. The living, the living of a miserable life in the material world by dint of the soul's choice is nicely illustrated by Milton in Paradise Lost. Similarly, by choice, the soul can regain paradise and return home back to Godhead. At the critical time of death, one can place the vital force between the two eyebrows and decide where he wants to go. If he is reluctant to maintain any connection with the material world, he can, in less than a second, reach the transcendental abode of Vaikuntha and appear there completely in a spiritual body, which will be suitable for him in the spiritual atmosphere. He has simply to desire to leave the material world both in finer and in grosser forms, and then move the vital force to the topmost part of the skull and leave the body from the hole in the skull called the Brahmarandra. This is easy for one perfect one perfect in the practice of yoga. Of course, man is endowed with free will, and as such, if he does not want to free himself from the material world, he may enjoy the life of Brahmapatha, occupation of the post of Brahma, and visit Siddhaloka, the planets of materially perfect beings who have full capacities to control gravity, space, and time. To visit these higher planets in the material universe, one need not give up his mind and intelligent, finer matter, but need only give up grosser matter, the material body. Each and every planet has its particular atmosphere. And if one wants to travel to any particular planet within the material universe, one has to adapt his material body to the climatic condition of that planet. For instance, if one wants to go from India to Europe, where the climatic condition is different, one has to change his dress accordingly. Similarly, a complete change of body is necessary if one wants to go to the transcendental planets of Vaikuntha. However, if one wants to go to the higher material planets, he can keep his finer dress of mind, intelligence, and ego, but has to leave his gross dress, body, made of earth, water, fire, etc. When one goes to a transcendental planet, it is necessary to change both the finer and gross bodies, for one has to reach the spiritual sky completely in a spiritual form. This change of dress will take place automatically at the time of death if one so desires. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that one will attain his next material body according to his desires at the time he leaves his body. The desire of the mind carries the soul to a suitable atmosphere as the wind carries aromas from one place to another. Unfortunately, those who are not yogis but gross materialists who throughout their lives indulge in sense gratification are puzzled by the disarrangement of the bodily and mental condition at the time of death. Such gross sensualists encumbered by the main ideas, desires, and associations of the lives they have led, desire something against their interest, and thus foolishly take on new bodies that perpetuate their material miseries. Systematic training of the mind and intelligence is therefore needed so that at the time of death, one may consciously desire a suitable body either on this planet or another material planet, or even a transcendental planet. A civilization that does not consider the progressive advancement of the immortal soul merely fosters a bestial life of ignorance. It is foolish to think that every soul that passes away goes to the same place. Either the soul goes to a place he desires at the time of death, or upon leaving his body, he is forced to accept a position according to his acts in his previous life. The difference between the materialist and the yogi is that a materialist cannot determine his next body, whereas a yogi can consciously attain a suitable body for enjoyment in the higher planets. Throughout his life, the gross materialist, who is constantly after sense gratification, spends all day earning his livelihood to maintain his family, and at night he wastes his time, his energy in sex enjoyment, or else goes to sleep thinking about all he has done in the daytime. That is the monotonous life of the materialist, although differently graded as businessmen, lawyers, politicians, professors, judges, coolies, pickpockets, laborers, and so on. Materialists all simply engage in eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratification, and thus spoil their valuable lives, pursuing luxury and neglecting to perfect their lives through spiritual realization. Yogis, however, try to perfect their lives. And therefore, the Bhagavad Gita enjoins that everyone should become a yogi. Yoga is the system for linking the soul in the service of the Lord. Only under superior guidance, one can practice such yoga in his life without changing his social position. As already described, a yogi can go anywhere he desires without mechanical help. For a yogi can place his mind and intelligence within the air circulating inside his body, and by practicing the art of breath control, he can mix that air with the air that blows all over the universe outside his body. With the help of his universal air, a yogi can travel to any planet and get a body suitable for its atmosphere. We can understand this process by comparing it to the electronic transmission of radio messages. With radio transmitters, sound waves produced at a certain station can travel all over the earth in seconds. But sound is produced from the ethereal sky, and as already explained, subtler than the ethereal sky is the mind, and finer than the mind is intelligence. Spirit is still finer than the intelligence, and by nature, it is completely different from matter. Thus, we can just imagine how quickly the spirit soul can travel through the universal atmosphere to come to the stage of manipulating finer elements like mind, intelligence, and spirit. One needs appropriate training, an appropriate mode of life, and appropriate association. Such training depends upon sincere prayers, devotional service, achievement of success in mystic perfection, and the successful merging of oneself in the activities of the soul and super soul. A gross materialist, whether he be an empiric philosopher, a scientist, a psychologist, or whatever, cannot attain such success through blunt efforts and word jugglery. Materialists who perform yagyas or great sacrifices are comparatively better than grosser materialists who do not know anything beyond laboratories and test tubes. The advanced materialist who perform such sacrifices can reach the planet called Vaishwarna, Vaishwanara, a fiery planet similar to the sun. On this planet, which is situated on the way to Brahmaloka, the topmost planet in the universe, such an advanced materialist can free himself from all traces of vice and its effects. When such a materialist is purified, he can rise to the orbit of the pole star, Dhruva. Within this orbit, which is called the Sisumara Chakra, are situated the Aditya Lokas and the Vaikuntha planet within this universe. A purified materialist who has performed many sacrifices, undergone severe penances, and given the major portion of his wealth in charity can reach such planets as Dhruva. And if he becomes still more qualified there, he can penetrate still higher orbits and pass through the navel of the universe to reach the planet Makaraloka, where sages like Bhrigumuni live. In Makaraloka, one can live even to the time of the partial annihilation of the universe. This annihilation begins when Anantadeva, from the lowest position in the universe, produces a great blazing fire. The heat of this fire reaches even Makaraloka, and then the residents of Makaraloka travel to Brahmaloka, which exists for twice the duration of Parartha time. In Brahmaloka, there is an unlimited number of airplanes that are controlled not by yantra, machine, but by mantra, psychic action. Because of the existence of the mind and intelligence on Brahmaloka, its residents have feelings of happiness and distress. But there is no cause of lamentation from old age, death, fear, or distress. They feel sympathy, however, for the suffering living beings who are consumed in the fire of annihilation. The residents of Brahmaloka do not have gross material bodies to change at death, but they transform their subtle bodies into spiritual bodies and thus enter the spiritual sky. The residents of Brahmaloka can attain perfection in three ways. Virtuous persons who reach Brahmaloka by dint of their pious work, become masters of various planets after the resurrection of Brahma. Those who have worshipped Garbhodakshai Vishnu are liberated with Brahma, and those who are pure devotees of personality of Godhead at once push through the covering of the universe and enter the spiritual sky. The numberless universes exist together in foam like clusters, and so only some of them are surrounded by the water of the causal ocean. When agitated by the glands of Karnodakshai Vishnu, material nature produces the total elements, which are eight in number and which gradually evolve from finer to gross. A part of ego is the sky, a part of which is air, a part of which is fire, a part of which is water, a part of which is earth. Thus, one universe inflates to an area of 4 billion miles in diameter. A yogi who desires gradual liberation must penetrate all the different coverings of the universe, including the subtle coverings of the three qualitative modes of material nature. One who does this never has to return to this material world. According to Sukadeva Goswami, the above description of the material and spiritual skies is neither imaginary nor utopian. The actual facts are recorded in the Vedic hymns, and Lord Vasudeva disclosed them to Lord Brahma when Brahma satisfied him. One can achieve the perfection of life only when he has a definite idea of Vaikuntha and the Supreme Godhead. One should always think about and describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for this is recommended in both the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavata Purana, which are two authorized commentaries upon the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya has made all these subject matters easier for the fallen people of this age to accept. And Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta has therefore presented them for the easy understanding of all concerned. Yeah, so we will now end 22. So we finished verse number 22.
And that's it, there's just the 22, it's not like a canto or a book or.
Like I will tell.
It's different versions.
So like we will stop here now. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Kishore Kishori ki jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Shri Shri Gauranatai ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrta ki jai.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but then I should wait.
Was he off camera when he asked you the question? The camera was off.
Hmm?
No, the camera has been on, so hopefully,
Oh, no, I just want to know, because I want to find that when I go home.